Hello and welcome to another one of my thoughts videos. This one I'm going to be looking at a concept that I've been chewing over in the last, throughout this year, is that of electronics in biology. Now this has come about by studying the mitochondria and photosynthesis in particular, and clarifying my understanding of that, and also applying that to what I've been learning over the years about electronics. I've only done simple electronics, but I have a reasonable basic foundation of how electronics works, how a transistor, diodes and all those sorts of things, capacitors and electricity and all that sort of stuff. So that learning of electronics, in my thinking, I've been trying to apply those principles to our body, as I've been seeing in other videos about alternative means of energy. And it occurred to me recently, and I've been chewing it over, by studying and trying to map that process of the water molecule and the protein through photosynthesis and through to respiration in the mitochondria, and therefore ATP production and all of that. And it seemed to me, in my understanding of electronics, is that we need to change a few basic concepts for us to apply to biology. Now, the electronics itself, we've been quite amazing over the last few decades in creating things like the transistors and diodes and all of that stuff. And our understanding of how it works, and on a molecular or atomic level, how the electrons flow, don't flow, how they store, how they repel, how they equalize, and all those sorts of things. So we have a reasonably good understanding of how the electronics works to be able to make the electronics that we have, including this camera and the internet and everything like that. And that has advanced us a lot. But I think that in biology, we have really seriously fallen behind due to a number of things, like they've turned our health into a business, and so therefore the drug industry and all of that has, and the medical system has taken advantage of that, and it has been convenient for them to remain in a status quo type of situation, and they will only make advances where they can make money out of it, it seems to me anyway. And they will even perpetrate lies and quarantining and stuff to also make money out of our health. There's moral issues with that, what I won't discuss now, but it means that a lot of what we've been studying is quite fantastic, quite amazing, and what we've managed to figure out is quite amazing. But I've found that with the mitochondria, that it seems our understanding is sort of upside down, and you've got to relate that to the whole system and to wider thinking. As I've said in other videos, you need to be observant and study everything that you can get your hands on, because there are a lot of things that seem unrelated that eventually are actually related. Now this all needs redefining, in that electronics is basically controlling energy to make it useful to do things like give us video and stuff like that. Well, in biology, that concept of managing energy and controlling it and funneling it, switching it and channeling it and everything, that concept, you need to bring that into biology. Biology has a lot of mechanics to it, of course, you know, muscles that will make a pivot point move and stuff like that. There's mechanics. Now, there's chemistry also, where the different chemicals do different things and achieve different things. Now, I am starting to think that the chemistry that is involved in biology forms a sort of an electronic type of circuit in concept. It's very hard to see physically and even imagine in a way, but the concept that it is the chemistry and physics of our body is in a way, it's like there is circuitry there is electronics. Now the basis of it is that we are thinking that we eat food and that gives us energy. I don't actually think that's quite true. In electronics, it's the same. There is energy everywhere. There's so much energy around us available that it's astounding, really. When you think that when a big cloud comes over and then there's so much energy in that cloud that makes lightning bolts fire down to the earth. There's energy everywhere. The difficulty is trying to make it useful. And that's where we've managed with electronics to understand enough of how that energy works to be able to generate it and then make electrons flow and everything like that. It did surprise me when I eventually found out that energy, that the electron is not energy. In fact, it doesn't even have energy as such. What it does in your electronic circuits and in electricity, and when you're generating electricity, is that you are getting electrons to move even microscopically, and in moving that generates an electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field is where the energy flows. So if you can set up an electromagnetic field, energy is able to flow. When you have cables in your walls and you have an electric drill or something like that, it's not actually the electrons that's doing the work. We've changed our thinking on that to say that you get the electrons to move to set up the electromagnetic field in the cables or around the cables. The energy does not actually move through the cables, through the wires. It travels through the electromagnetic field that the electrons set up around that wire. So the energy doesn't travel through the wires, it travels through the electromagnetic field. Now that is the basis of something like a diode, where you have electrons that are trying to flow, and there are gaps where in your diode that will allow it to leap across, but when it tries going the other way, the gap is too wide for it to jump back the other way and it blocks it. So you're controlling the flow of electrons. Transistors are the same. You're controlling the electron flow so that you can control the energy fields, the electromagnetic fields, to control the energy. And in controlling that energy and making things happen as a result. Now the same thing is going to happen in your biology. I propose that the thinking that we have in biology, that through photosynthesis and through respiration, we are the important part are electrons. I propose the important parts is not the electrons, but the other components within the process. The electrons, they are just so abundant in the world, in the atmosphere, that it's crazy. So what you're trying to do is set up a hardware situation whereby the hardware allows the energy that is abundant to flow where you want it to flow. So when you're coming to photosynthesis, they think the goal of the chlorophyll and the manganese stealing electrons, the current thinking seems to be that they want to take the electrons because the electrons is what they want, and that's the important part of that process. They say, oh, the oxygen's not important, we'll throw that away, and the protium ion, which is the hydrogen, just gets, by the way, included in the system. I propose that the main purpose of photosynthesis is to capture the protiums. The electrons are incidental, and yes, they will process them and recycle them and use them because they are useful. But the main goal of splitting the water molecule is to get the protium, the ions, that is transporting the hydrogens with its electron missing, combining it with ADH, P, AD, that one, and it's the protium that is the important part of the water that we're trying to process, because with that protium you're going to set up an electronic setup, as it were, component in the mitochondria to make an electron flow to then store more electrons and more components with the ATP. I would like to really get on to defining how I think that is, but possibly in another video to dedicate some proper energy to it. But I want to just get the concept across that in photosynthesis, when we need to change our thinking to say that the sun is not capturing energy, it's not even so interested in the electrons, it's more interested in gaining the components for the electronics that need to be set up at a later date in respiration and in other processes for creating other constructions within the plant or the animal, the entity. So the important part of the photosynthesis is the protium, the H, the hydrogen ion, because that is what's going to give a positive charge to something to come from the negative charge to make electrons flow and therefore allow energy to flow within those magnetic fields that the electron flow is going to produce. Now, I'll expand on that, I think, later. My brain is sort of trying to get a trail that we can follow that's logical, but my mind is bouncing all over the place. But I'll leave it at that. I think that a lot of the components in our bodies which don't look electronic, in principle, in concept, are working in an electronic way by controlling the flow of electrons. In another video, I'll go a bit more into detail of how that affects and turns the mitochondria understanding upside down from what the current narrative is. So stay tuned for that one. Electronics in our system.